Assassin's Creed Shadows might go down as the weirdest launch in video game history. This game has been wrapped in controversy, leaks, delays, identity politics, all kinds of issues. And I've never seen a company have so much writing on the line while simultaneously stumbling all over themselves at every given turn. Let's be honest here. Let's be clear about this. Assassin's Creed Shadows decides the fate of Ubisoft. Their future is hanging by a thread, and that thread is Assassin's Creed Shadows. And after playing the game, I'm going to be honest with you guys, that thread isn't very strong. I'll break down my experience in detail, but let's just say that despite what games media is saying, why does this keep happening? The game is what I like to refer to as aggressively mid. It's a Trojan horse of a game. It's very pretty. And when you peel back its exterior, there's really just nothing going on inside of it. Nothing at all. And I think a lot of people really expected that to happen. They saw that coming. But to be honest with you, contrary to popular belief, I wanted Assassin's Creed to be good. I want Ubisoft to be good. I want this company and this game to succeed because I've enjoyed it in the past, but I just haven't been able to get into it or play it because of what they've done with it over the years. And Ubisoft has mismanaged themselves into a corner at this point, and I don't think that they can escape. They've compromised too much. They've changed too many things. Their games have lost any real sense of identity, and a new game release isn't going to fix that. Games journalists are already running defense for it. Their stockholders are protesting at their door. There's a legal task force that they're building to fight against content creators and the players. Japanese politicians are outraged, and even with the glowing media praise that the game got, their share prices are still falling. A crumbling empire doesn't need a new flag. It needs a miracle. And Ubisoft's not getting one. But before all that, a word from today's sponsor, EVE Online. Space is brutal, but in EVE Online, it's yours to conquer. For over 20 years, EVE Online has been the ultimate space MMO, where hundreds of thousands of players carve out their own empires in an ever-evolving galaxy. There's only one server, meaning that every battle, every deal, and every betrayal is part of the same living history. And the best part? It's completely free to play. How you shape that history is entirely up to you. You can become an explorer, uncovering the lost secrets of deep space, an industrialist, building warships and running the economy, an enforcer taking on high-risk missions for powerful factions, a soldier of fortune diving into massive PvP battles and interstellar warfare. With over 250 ships to master, there is a role for every kind of player. But if you're just starting out, the smartest move is to join a corporation. They'll teach you the ropes, give you allies, and help you thrive in the cutthroat universe of EVE. And right now, you can get a kickstart to your own space adventure with 1 million skill points, completely free. That's a huge boost to get you started. So don't wait. Use the link in the description or in the pinned comment and download EVE Online today and carve your name into the stars. Thank you to EVE Online for sponsoring today's video. Assassin's Creed Shadows isn't just another big release, it's Ubisoft's last chance at proving that they can still compete. Not because it's one of the biggest franchises in gaming, but because Ubisoft spent the last few years free-falling off of a financial cliff. Prince of Persia reviewed well, but it flopped financially. X-Defiant was a live service disaster that never made it out of beta before it got shut down. Skull of Bones torched millions and then sunk in the harbor. Star Wars Outlaws never found an audience. Ubisoft has been bleeding money, alienating their audience, and doubling down on leadership that sees itself as some type of brave resistance against toxic gamers, while their own investors are begging them to stop setting piles of cash on fire. And now everything is riding on Assassin's Creed Shadows. Now, I don't want you guys to get it twisted, because over time, I do think that Assassin's Creed Shadows will sell, because Assassin's Creed Mirage, a scaled-back AA version with middling reviews, still moved 5 million copies. Shadows is a mainline, full-budget release with marketing hype and the long-requested Japanese setting. It's going to push units. How many? Well, we're going to have to wait and see, but I am doubtful that it's going to be able to overcome its own budget, let alone save the company. I'll be honest with you guys, after playing it, I think that games journalists are afraid to review this one honestly. Not because Ubisoft paid them off, but because they don't want to be responsible for pushing yet another struggling publisher further into the abyss. They've gotten too close, they see developers as allies, and with all of the controversy and negative commentary around Assassin's Creed Shadows and heck, a lot of other games, they want a win. I've seen the rhetoric already talking about how people are upset for nothing, complaining for no reason, outraged without purpose, all because game journalists positively reviewed it. Man, it's almost like we've seen this happen before. Right now, the game sits at an 81 on Metacritic, and that score isn't being dragged down by bad reviews, it's being dragged up by overly generous ones. VG247 gave it a perfect score, 100 out of 100, while admitting in the first sentence of their review that the game has issues. I'm sorry, but if a game has issues, it's not a perfect game. Moreover, how the hell did you guys rate Ghost of Tsushima a 60, yet its knockoff version in Shadows a 100? We're hearing the same lazy talking points from Dragon Age the Veilguard when it was reviewed. A return to form for Ubisoft. A return to form for Assassin's Creed. A return to what exactly? If this is a true return to form, we'd be talking about the original trilogy. Methodical combat, gripping storytelling, incredible voice acting. Instead, I'm seeing reviewers gushing about how the game looks, romance options, petting cats, and how groundbreaking it is that you can go prone in a video game. I keep saying this, but the industry does not seem to realize how much damage is done when you do not review these games and critique them honestly. For whatever reason, studios and publishers still take professional reviewers and journalists more seriously than actual players. EA outright said it with Dragon Age the Veilguard when it flopped, and Ubisoft, well, they were caught off guard when Star Wars Outlaws failed to sell despite getting a solid Metacritic score. The role of a critic isn't to keep these studios in business or to help them sell games, it's to share the player's perspective, hold the industry accountable, and make better games easier to make. I've played Assassin's Creed Shadows, and this is my first Assassin's Creed game since Black Flag, and I'm around 20 hours in, and I can say without hesitation that Assassin's Creed Shadows is one of the most immersive and visually stunning worlds Ubisoft has ever created. Potentially one of the best in gaming. The lighting, the seasonal shifts, the wildlife, the sound design, everything looks and sounds incredible. It's an environment that begs you to explore every inch of it. And the moment that you do, you realize that there's nothing actually worth exploring. The reward for straying off the beaten path is an epic rarity wall scroll that you can hang in your base, or maybe a legendary rock that you can put in the corner, a legendary sword that'll be outclassed by a common sword 2 levels later, viewpoints unveiling breathtaking vistas and areas of interest only for those areas to contain nothing but the same copy-pasted objectives. 3 missing scrolls, 3 bandits holding a hostage, another enemy fort, another repetitive infiltration mission, identical commanders for you to assassinate. The world doesn't have depth, it has chores. Ubisoft had front-loaded this entire experience. It's vain, superficial, and boring as hell to play. It's the same tried and true Ubisoft formula that got them where they are today, spiraling on the edge of bankruptcy, earning XP and leveling up, gaining skills. These things should make you feel stronger, but well, Assassin's Creed Shadows, they lock that behind an additional barrier. You can't unlock the next tier of abilities until you go out grinding knowledge points. Well, how do you get those? Well, by praying at shrines, by finding lost scrolls, by running yellow paint obstacle courses, by completing the same checklist repetitive exploration activities over and over and over. You guys get the point. And this really wouldn't be that much of a problem if you only had to do it a few times, but unlocking even the first tier of skills requires hours of grinding. By the time I reach 20 hours of playtime, I'm no longer immersed in the game. I'm actively trying to break it. Ubisoft made a really cool move here, trying to make the game better by removing persistent markers to give you a better sense of immersion, no UI clutter, but it's all been undone by the repetitive checklists that they give you. I'm running around holding left trigger, scanning for glowing dots so I can finish these objectives as quickly as I possibly can because I don't want to do them anymore. The first castle infiltration mission was exciting. You had to eliminate an elite samurai, steal a key, and unlock a major reward, but by the third time, I wasn't playing the game anymore. I was trying to play the system. I ran around recklessly holding focus mode while enemies chased me so I could tag enemies, sprinting between bushes, waited until I found the elite samurai I needed to kill, then baited them into a corner, killed them one by one, and looted the reward. Which should have been a rare, intense assassination mission had already just become another formulaic Ubisoft side activity. And all of this is made worse by the combat, which just isn't interesting. It's too bare bones, it's too simple, it's too repetitive. It's like gacha game. Oh my god, it actually is gacha game combat. There's no actual combos, no depth to the combat, no meaningful enemy variety. Unlocking a new ability takes 50 hours of grinding filler, so instead, you're just running around spamming light and heavy attacks for hours. And the story's no better. Yasuke and Naoe, the two main protagonists, feel completely inauthentic. Naoe is introduced as an Iga clan assassin from the 16th century, yet she's constantly disregarding her father's wishes and contradicting him. One of the clan's leaders, as if she's some sort of rebellious teenager in a CW drama. This is not how Japanese culture worked in the 1500s, and it barely even works that way today. Her character writing is so inconsistent. One moment she's a kind-hearted, cheerful young woman, the next she's a ruthless killer, next she's painting with an orphan, and then she's coldly executing someone without hesitation. The writing just feels so disjointed, like multiple drafts of her character were just stitched together without any editing. At one point, you go to meet a blacksmith and he tells Nawe that he lost his parents. Her response is, "I'm sorry to hear that. Anyway, want to be our blacksmith? Maybe that'll help you get over it." What? This is the same character that just watched the eradication of her entire clan and the death of her father, and she doesn't want to take the time to reflect on that at all or show any compassion? It just doesn't make any sense. Another really good example is her dynamic with Yasuke, because he's responsible for killing her clan with Nobunaga. Do they explore how difficult it would be for these two to trust one another or the complexities of that dynamic? No, it's practically, you killed my people. Yeah, that was my bad. True, let's be best friends. At this point, I'm questioning whether or not I'll even make it to doing any of Yasuke's story and just continue to play the game as Nawe, because to be honest, I just don't have any interest in playing him. He doesn't fit the mold of an Assassin's Creed character. He doesn't even really fit in the world. You can't even do most of the content in the game with his character in the first place. And beyond that, his introduction is the most forced and awkward "we need this character in the game" moment I've ever seen. Nobunaga looks at him and says, "I see a warrior in you that has the power to shape history or you'll die." And then it fast forwards to him being Nobunaga's lead samurai, burning a village to the ground and killing its people. And Yasuke's like, "This isn't like any war I've ever seen. So much slaughter." And Nobunaga's like, "Ah, you're such a righteous man. Anyway, go murder those people." And Yasuke's like, "Bet." The game's story reads like the Harry Potter My Immortal fanfic, and honestly, I think that was better writing. At this point, Assassin's Creed isn't even a franchise, it's just a storefront with a game attached. No, literally, that's exactly what this is, at least on PC. They implemented the Animus launcher, which essentially is a built-in third-party launcher and a direct microtransaction funnel. Players can buy weapons and armor with real money, not cosmetics, but legendary equipment with actual stats and unique passives. Upon reviewing the store, I realized just how much of Ubisoft's game design is dictated by its monetization. The game's economy is deliberately restrictive to encourage spending. They slow you down in hopes that you spend more. The base building system, as an example, players need materials to upgrade their base, but resources are intentionally scarce unless you go out and grind endlessly or purchase supply packs from the in-game store. You can find massive bundles out in the world to be able to smuggle things out of enemy bases, but if you do that, well, then you're not going to be able to use those scouts to reveal map locations. So either add hours of bloat to your playthrough, ignore the mechanic entirely, or spend money to utilize it. The entire design is built around inconvenience just to sell you a solution. And I think that's their Achilles heel. That's the root to all of their evils. Why wasn't this talked about in a single review? Ubisoft games are not designed as games, they're designed as marketing attractions. That's the reason why all of the effort goes into how it looks on the outside rather than how it plays on the inside. This is a huge problem across the industry. They've lost sight of the fact that we don't just need to look at this game, we need to play it too. That's why the gameplay feels so repetitive, all of the different activities. It's why the combat is so brain dead and the story isn't gripping and the characters are so shallow, because they just want to get you in the door in hopes that you spend more. That's it. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to make money. That's what you're in business to do. That's what businesses do, but you have to earn that money. And Ubisoft has lost sight of that. So many other companies have as well. They had everything at their disposal to make an incredible game. You have the technology, the experience, the money, the franchise, and yet Assassin's Creed Shadows is just another bloated, shallow, microtransaction-riddled Ubisoft mess. It's so disappointing. You know, I watched Mr. Matty Plays in his review, and he said, "I represent the fan base that wants to get back into the franchise." If the media and Ubisoft would just stop being so defensive for just a few minutes, they would realize that the vast majority of the frustration that is coming from players is for that reason specifically. Players are watching as a franchise that they've loved drifts further and further away from them. They just can't get into it anymore. And they know what it's capable of. They know what it can do. The investors see it too. That's the reason why they're protesting right now. Because they know what this company is capable of. They know what its IP is capable of. And the last thing that they want to do is see these assholes in their management run away from the problem scot-free and get away with it and leave these guys holding the bag. All they want them to do is listen. Luckily for Ubisoft, well, they've built a task force to make sure that doesn't happen. Ubisoft shareholders have been in revolt for well over a year now because Ubisoft refuses to listen to them or communicate with them. The company has been in talks with Xbox, EA, and Tencent about potential acquisitions, going private, or selling off key IPs. These discussions aren't just casual speculation. They are legally obligated to disclose every move to their shareholders because failing to do so is considered insider trading. Yet every time I see this situation covered, the media always misses the bigger picture. They reduce it to investors just wanting more profits as if that's the only issue. But for once, the investors align with our interests because in this case, they're getting ripped off harder than we are right now. Think about it for a second. Why would investors be angry about a potential sale or merger? Normally, shareholders love acquisitions because that means higher returns, but Ubisoft is at its lowest value in history, and management has done nothing to fix it. If the company sells now, its executives get to walk away completely unscathed, while the investors, the people who have been putting money into Ubisoft, are left holding the bag. The backlash from their shareholders isn't because they want Ubisoft to stay independent at all costs. It's because they don't want them to sell out at rock bottom. They want the company to actually fix itself, increase the value of its shares, and go back to making award-winning games. Their frustrations come from watching Ubisoft destroy its own value, ignore every warning sign, ignore all of their customers, and try to escape the consequences. That's why their shareholders are threatening to sue, not because they're greedy, but because they've been played. All this because they refuse to listen. Assassin's Creed Shadows might go down as one of the most controversial games ever made. Not because it pushed boundaries, not because it did anything revolutionary, but because Ubisoft and the media refused to acknowledge common sense, caution, and criticism, whether it was from fans, investors, or from Japan itself. How many times have you guys seen somebody dismiss the backlash around Assassin's Creed Shadows as fake outrage? Every time concerns are raised about historical inaccuracies or cultural respect, there was always somebody there that was ready to wave it off as meaningless. Now, if you go and actually read the reviews, you'll see how often these same journalists are emphasizing how authentically Japanese the game is and how much it respects their culture. And yet, since mid-2024, all we've seen is damage control headlines. Assassin's Creed Shadows team issues apology to fans for marketing that has caused concern. Ubisoft apologizes to Japanese historical reenactment group for using its flag in Assassin's Creed art without permission. Assassin's Creed Shadows figure removed from sale for insensitive design. And more recently, Japan's prime minister commenting about the game, warning that it may promote vandalism of shrines. While both Japanese citizens and officials have voiced their concerns, defenders on Twitter and Western games journalists have done nothing but shield Ubisoft and try to reframe the criticism. Outlets like The Guardian have gone far out of their way to dehumanize critics, reducing actual Japanese concerns to nothing more than right-wing outrage. Instead of engaging with the real conversation, they dismiss it with articles like, "The disturbing online misogyny of Gamergate has returned if it ever went away," or "It's been a challenge, Assassin's Creed Shadows and the quest to bring feudal Japan to life." Both articles push the same lazy, dishonest narrative that any criticism of Ubisoft's handling of Japanese culture, history, or the casting of Yasuke is nothing more than a manufactured outrage campaign. Never mind the fact that there are actual concerns coming from Japanese politicians, players, historians, and cultural groups. Never mind that the game actually uses real-life shrines, their names, and altars without permission, lets players raid the royal family's tomb and other burial sites, some of the most sacred places in Japanese culture, just to loot some epic rarity rewards and get achievements. Never mind that Ubisoft, in their infinite wisdom, gave Yasuke the ability to have an affair with Nobunaga's sister, a woman famous for her faithfulness whose bloodline still exists today. It's painfully obvious what these outlets are doing. They need a win against their perceived enemies, players that just want Ubisoft to be honest about the game's accuracy and respect the culture that it's portraying. Instead of engaging with that, they label all criticism as reactionary and ignore the actual issue. Ubisoft essentially Google searched Japan and Asian, and that's the game that they made. And I think it's the media's support and their obsession with framing everything as a culture war that pushed Ubisoft to taking the most extreme delusional measure to combat that imaginary enemy by assembling a task force and a therapy group to prepare their developers for potential online attacks. Think about that. Instead of just listening to valid criticism, Ubisoft prepared for war. In an article written by BFM Tech & Co., written by Melinda Devon Salas, translated from French to English, they recalled a recent interview with Ubisoft and how they plan to protect their workers. They write, A resurgence in sales and critical success would be a much needed morale boost for Ubisoft and its teams, especially after navigating the turbulent waters in recent times. The game has been at the center of multiple controversies, from anti-DEI movements attacking the game over the inclusion of a black samurai to criticism from certain Japanese players who see the setting as a cultural betrayal to persistent rumors of acquisition. On top of that, Ubisoft is still dealing with the fallout from the trial of former executives accused of workplace harassment and misconduct, further adding to the company's woes. The atmosphere remains tense, particularly for developers. To mitigate potential online backlash, Ubisoft has implemented protective measures for its employees. We're being advised not to publicly mention on social media that we work for Ubisoft to avoid harassment. One employee revealed, recalling many online attacks that have occurred since the game's announcement. Ubisoft is taking proactive steps to handle this extreme and stressful situation. An online harassment campaign that was presented during labor meetings to support employees during the game's release. The initiative comes from Canada. There's a dedicated team monitoring all social media and responding quickly to targeted attacks. Psychological and legal support is being promised to employees who become targets. Unlike previous efforts, this time it's being taken seriously, they emphasized. Posts on X, formerly Twitter, Reddit, and YouTube videos will be closely monitored by a dedicated team, ready to report swiftly to any issues. Lawyers are already on standby, prepared to file lawsuits in any cases of confirmed harassment. How many boxes do you need to shove criticism into before you can comfortably ignore it? This is exactly why Ubisoft has gone to such ridiculous lengths, because the media keeps dialing things up to 11. They've created an industry-wide hysteria where any pushback is treated as an existential threat. Sure, there are bad faith actors in every controversy. There always are. And yeah, I fully believe that there are people that are out there that are going to hijack these movements to push whatever their ideological goals are. But that's not what's happening here. The media's blanket dismissals, lumping Japanese critics and actual concerned players into the same pile as online extremists, is a coward's way out. There's plenty of criticism a company can and should ignore. Bad faith outrage, personal attacks, and unhinged nonsense, but this isn't that. Assassin's Creed Shadows is under fire for legitimate reasons. Cultural misrepresentation, blatant disrespect, and Ubisoft's refusal to engage with criticism in good faith. And instead of having a real discussion, the media is shoving it all under the same umbrella, slapping an ideological label on it, and calling it a day. Do I believe that there are psychos that are out there that are trying to attack, dox, and threaten developers? Of course, that always happens. That always will happen. It's disgusting, it should be condemned, and it should be mitigated. But I have a hard time believing that it's happening at such a massive scale that Ubisoft needs to publicly announce a legal team and psychological support group for their developers. This wasn't some necessary response to overwhelming attacks. It was a panic reaction fueled by media-driven hysteria. And Ubisoft's refusal to clarify what attacks actually are makes the situation even worse by saying that they have people that are out there that are combing Twitter, Reddit, YouTube, and monitoring targeted attacks, but not defining what those attacks actually are, or what they consider them to be. They're creating a chilling effect on criticism. When a company makes it clear that they are actively watching social media for attacks, what do you think that does? Critics and content creators immediately clench up. Look, I'm going to be honest with you guys. YouTube is a fragile platform for critics. There are really no protections if a company decides to misuse the system. If Ubisoft gets trigger happy with copyright strikes or false reports, a single strike could permanently damage a channel. And before you say they won't do that, Ubisoft already got a VTuber banned by accident when they messed up with their own sponsored stream embargo. Imagine what happens when they misfire again, but this time it's a critic. This is the danger of corporations forming task forces like this. It's one thing for individual developers to protect themselves. That's understandable. But when you have an international publisher starting to put together a legal team specifically to monitor speech across multiple platforms, it's no longer about safety, it's about control. Ubisoft didn't clarify what their task force is actually going to do, and that uncertainty alone is enough to scare some critics into silence. This is how you kill open discussion. This is how bad games keep getting a free pass. By turning everything into a battle, they've made any real criticism, whether it's about the game's quality, historical accuracy, or corporate dishonesty, it's all getting drowned out by noise. They're creating a world where players don't feel comfortable voicing legitimate criticisms without being lumped in with lunatics. This has been the wildest escalation of events that I've ever seen for a game before. And I don't think that it's going to stop, because you have a lot of people that are really invested in this game failing, and you have a lot of people that are really invested in the game succeeding. I just like covering it more than anything else. I don't really care what direction it goes in. It'll make for interesting content either way. But I'm really interested to see how people are going to engage with this game. I don't like it. I really don't. I hate it, in fact. And the reason I hate it is because it disappoints me, because it's a company that is so big It's so experienced. It's been in this industry for so long. You have 20,000 developers. This should be the best game ever made. But they just keep aiming way under the bar. And it's all because of greed. It's because monetization dictates everything that they do. You know, they have a monetization director for single player games. Why? Why would you do that? And they're involved in all of the biggest decisions the game makes. That's a terrible idea. It's the worst idea you could ever have. I'm really interested to see how people engage with this game. I do not think that this is going to be the ultimate Hail Mary that they needed. Because across the board, it's just not very good. First few hours, you're going to enjoy it. And I think you're going to see that, and honestly, that makes a lot of sense when you start looking at the reviews, because 9 times out of 10, a lot of the reviewers don't actually ever even finish these games. They only play maybe 15 or 20 hours and they move on to the next game. And because of that, you're going to get a very limited experience and go, oh yeah, it's a very good game, very pretty. We've already seen 3 games in the past 6 months get the same level of marketing, the reviews, the fanfare by the media, and they ultimately still resulted in no financial win. And one of those games was made by Ubisoft. And there's a really good chance this is going to be another one. And I think the game is still going to move copies. I just don't think it's going to move that many, or as many as they need it to. Because, don't get me wrong, the game is essentially the Call of Duty of third-person action games. But I just think that, I don't think players are going to dig it as much as Ubisoft needs them to. Player expectations are higher than they've ever been. People don't have enough money. And I also think that this is something else that's unique, and I probably need to look into this and write something about it, but I don't think players are into the whiplash that we've been getting with games lately. Like, just a couple years ago, we had Baldur's Gate 3, which is just like a wild game. And then you go to play Starfield right after Baldur's Gate 3, and you're like, what the hell is going on? Like, these guys have way more money. They've been in the industry longer. They've made some of the best games ever. How did you make this when I just played that? And I think the same thing's going to happen with people that played Kingdom Come Deliverance 2. You get into this game that has this crazy level of detail and writing and authenticity and the voice acting and the characters and the world and the immersive qualities and all of these things. And then you go and you play Avowed or Assassin's Creed. And it's just like, whoa, how does this happen? How does such a small team, a small focused team with far less resources and far less money make something like that? And then you guys with literally the world at your fingertips can't deliver something that even comes close to it. Players are going to get sick of that. They're not going to deal with it. They'll look for those really crazy big banger games that just blow your mind. It blows the industry out of the water. There's at least 1, 2, or 3 that are going to come out just about every single year. They're going to ignore the rest and then play indie games. That's what's going to happen. I think that's going to happen right now. Anyway, I'm really interested to see where things go from here. I could talk about player numbers and stuff like that. I've seen it, but if you guys know me, I don't count my chickens before my eggs hatch. Did I say? Yeah. Anyway, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe. I'll catch you guys in the next one.